welcome back to my channel. So today we're talking about the unsolved murder of Egypt Covington, and this one is an incredibly rough one. She was a 27-year-old that was just completely senselessly murdered in 2017, and there's actually not a lot of coverage on her. I think I only found articles going through 2018. Granted, we're only a few months into 2019, but it seems like things are going very quiet, and that made me really, really nervous because I've had my eye on this case for a while. I was first introduced to it through Crime Watch Daily. They did a 3-video series on it, and it was one of those where you leave and you feel the case to your core. The amount of emotional turmoil and heartbreaks, I'm like 2 seconds into the video and ready to bawl. Oh my gosh. You can just feel the pain that her family is going through and that her boyfriend is going through. And it is one of the most heartbreaking episodes that I think I have ever watched on Crime Watch Daily. So before I get too emotional, before I even get into the video, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right on into the details. Egypt was only 27 years old when she had her life taken away from her in her own home in Van Buren, Michigan. Egypt was described by her father as the example of light and love and talent. Everyone who knew her fell in love with her. She was an incredibly loving and caring person. She accepted everyone for who they were. She could get along with pretty much absolutely anybody. She loved music most of all. Music was her biggest passion, and she played a ton of instruments, but the thing that she was known for was her voice. She could sing so well, and she had a strong pair of lungs. She could belt the music out. She won so many different kinds of contests. Her favorite kind of music to sing was blues, but she could sing anything that she wanted to. And because she was this positive and uplifting person, it only made sense that she was a bartender, and she bartended at a place in Ann Arbor called Fraser's Pub. And this again was perfect for her. She flourished in this environment because, as you know, if you're a bartender, your job's not only to make drinks, but to, start conversations and make relationships with people. You want to keep people at the bar. You want to keep people drinking. You want to entertain. And she was perfect for that. Everyone who came into the bar to meet her, they all loved her. They all knew her. She was pretty much best friends with anyone the second that she met them. And then she finally ended up landing a dream job as an account manager for a wholesale distribution company. I think it was for a beverage company in specific. So her work life was great. She was doing something that she loved. She was doing something that she was good at. And she even had a pretty good personal life as well. She was really, really close to her family. And about 10 years prior to her death, she met this man named Curtis. And she fell head over heels for Curtis pretty much right away. But their relationship was on and off the entire time. And I feel like when people hear that, they assume something negative, but for them, that wasn't the case really at all. She worked as a bartender, so obviously her hours were pretty much late at night, early into the morning, and he had a typical 9-to-5 job. He had a daughter, so his lifestyle was very, very different from hers. Their schedules just didn't work out, and over the course of that 10 years, she's growing as a person, she's maturing as a person, and they just found it really, really difficult to successfully have a relationship for multiple different reasons. So things were very complicated, and they wanted to be together, but their schedules and their life at the moment just kind of didn't allow it. Egypt was dating other people during these breaks, and I think he might have been as well. I can't confirm that, but either way, they always found a way to end up back together. And even her family said they knew that even when she wasn't with him, she loved him and she wanted to be with him. It was just kind of one of those magnetic situations. And then finally, right before Egypt's disappearance, they had the opportunity to actually be together. Because Egypt switched her job from being a bartender to being an account manager at the distribution company, she had regular hours and their schedules finally seemed to meet up. It was like their lives had just completely been made. They were head over heels. They were so excited. They could finally make things work, and they actually decided to move in together because Curtis's lease was going to end at the very end of July of 2017. He said he would move in with her. She lived in a duplex on Hull Road, and they were excited. This was 10 years, and they finally had this massive opportunity, and it was something that they had been waiting for this entire time. But after all that time, someone took it upon themselves to put a halt at all of this excitement and happiness that was happening in not only Egypt's life, but Curtis's life and everyone surrounding the both of them. On June 22nd, 2017, Egypt spent the day out with a friend. I think she was with her friend for a portion of the night, and then she planned to go home and start cleaning because she was really close to when Curtis was supposed to move in, and I'm sure she needed to get some of her stuff out of the way, get rid of things, and she'd asked a friend to come over that night, but her friend was incredibly tired, and she said, maybe next time, so she ended up being alone at her house that night. She was texting people all throughout the night. She was texting Curtis. She even texted her stepmom to say that she wanted to get off of the family phone plan. She texted her sister about wanting a French bulldog. She asked for pictures of her niece. And finally, at around 10 p.m., Curtis said goodnight to her. Now, I'm not sure if she was planning to go to bed at this point in time or if he just had to go to bed for the night. None of the people that spoke to her that night had any idea that it would be the very last time that they would talk to Egypt. The following morning, Curtis sent her his typical good morning text, as you do in most relationships, but he received absolutely no response from her, which was odd because she normally responded pretty quickly. He kind of assumed maybe she left her phone somewhere, maybe it'll just take her a while to respond. So he kept trying to text her throughout the day, and then his calls started becoming more frequent. And the later the day got, he really expected a response, but there was not a single word from Egypt whatsoever. Finally, after work, Curtis decided that he wanted to go ahead and go over to her house to check on her because this was not like her at all. So he sent out a couple more phone calls just in case, but she still didn't respond. And by the time that he got to her house, his heart sank because he noticed that her car was in her driveway. So at this point, it was a lot less likely she had forgotten her phone, and he already knew she wouldn't be ignoring him for any reason. She was just not that kind of person. So he knew something just definitely wasn't right. When he got to the door, he noticed that the door was somewhat open, which again, not a great sign. And when he went inside and called to Egypt, her dog Ruby came running to him. Now, Ruby loved everybody. Ruby would get so excited when anyone would come over. She would jump on you. She'd be trying to give you kisses. But on this day, he noticed she was not doing that. She was keeping her distance, and she was just looking at him straight in his eyes and barking at him. So this was another sign, yet again, that something was wrong. And she turned around and ran away, and Curtis decided to follow her, and he ended up following her straight to Egypt's body. Egypt was on the floor bleeding from what he assumed to be possibly her head, and she had her hands bound behind her back, and they were bound with Christmas lights. He was absolutely petrified, obviously, and ran out of the house hysterical, and he called 911 to get authorities there as fast as possible. And when they got there, Egypt was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities went over the crime scene, and it was odd for so many different reasons. She only had a single gunshot wound to the back of her head, and from what I've seen, there was no other signs of trauma on her body. Again, she had her hands bound behind her back, but it wasn't bound by something like rope. It was bound by Christmas lights. It was the end of June. And also, there had been absolutely no sign of forced entry. There was no sign of a robbery, and there was absolutely no sign of a struggle.
They said that there was no struggle, that she knew them and they knew her well.
Egypt was 5'10", and she could bench 200 pounds, and she knew how to fight. This girl would have put up a fight if someone had broken into her home or if someone had come in and started threatening her. So it was very bizarre to authorities that there just wasn't any sign of a struggle at all anywhere inside of the home. This person had to have come in and completely taken her by surprise. So this, for obvious reasons, kind of led them straight to Curtis. They would have obviously gone this route anyways. Usually the spouses are the first people that are checked, especially paired with the fact that he was the one that ended up finding her body, and they wanted to rule him out as fast as possible or see if he was possibly involved. I think within 3 days of her murder, he had been extensively questioned. He was polygraphed. He went through a lot right after finding out that the love of his life was murdered, and authorities were able to rule him out pretty much right away. But at this point, they had no idea who else would possibly do something like this to Egypt. But some people close to Egypt had someone on their mind from the second they found out the news. During the last break that Curtis and Egypt had taken, she dated a man named Kenny, and it was very far from the fairy tale relationship that she seemed to have with Curtis. According to her friends, Kenny was very controlling, and I want to just say this before I get into all this information. This is all speculation. Egypt's not here to say this herself, and this is all kind of third-party information coming in. A lot of stuff cannot be verified, but as I was saying, her friends said that he was very controlling in their opinion. He always wanted to know where Egypt was. He always wanted to know what Egypt was doing, and not just out of like innocent curiosity. He wanted to know her every move, and he wanted to be in control of it. He would go through her phone on a constant basis. He did a lot to belittle her. Again, that's a form of trying to gain control of someone. He would sleep with her friends to belittle her. He just didn't seem to be a very great person. But she was way too free-spirited for this, and I think it probably scared him very bad, and that's why he acted this way. And she kept most of this information to herself. She didn't tell her family at first. She only told a few things to her friends until her most recent family vacation, where Egypt finally started letting all this information out to her sister, and it all just came pouring out. She told her sister how bad their relationship actually was. Apparently, according to what her sister has said, Kenny would push her a lot. There was a lot of shoving. He would kind of corner her against a wall and then start punching the wall beside her head. There was even a point when they were at a wedding where he grabbed her and shoved her up against a wall. And it was so bad that police ended up being called, but unfortunately, she didn't actually press any charges on him because the wedding party made her feel guilty. They said that, she ruined their time by calling police or by having police come. So basically, it's a very typical situation that an abuse victim is in, where people make them feel guilty. Like they're the ones making the problem, like they don't deserve help. So she never actually filed any police report against this incident. Finally, Egypt had had enough. She ended things with Kenny. She didn't want anything to do with him anymore. Kenny did not take this well, to say the least. According to friends and according to Egypt's sister, he almost was in denial for a while. He did not want to believe that they actually weren't in a relationship anymore. He could not come to grips with that fact whatsoever. So it actually took a while for him to accept the fact that she had left him. That to me is incredibly alarming. And on top of that, as soon as he found out that she was back with Curtis, he was mad. He contacted her constantly, called her all names under the sun. It just was a really bad situation. And unfortunately, the stories didn't seem to stop here from all of the interviews of Egypt's family and friends. Curtis said that as soon as they got back together, more instances started happening. And one night, Egypt had stayed over at his house, and apparently they woke up early one morning, or at least he woke up early one morning, and I think he heard a noise or, something happened that made him go and look out the window, and he noticed that Kenny's truck was parked right behind Egypt's car at Curtis's house. And he looked, and Kenny was just kind of circling Egypt's car, like peering in all of the windows. And then he just got in his car and sped off. Obviously, that's alarming. That feels like someone is stalking her. And he told Egypt about this, and Egypt decided to confront Kenny about it. And Kenny said, "Oh no, I was just working in the area and I drove by, saw your car, and I saw that your sunroof was open and it had been raining, so that's why I was there." But no one really seemed to buy this. I mean, what are the chances that he just so happens to drive by her car at her boyfriend's house right after they broke up? It just seemed like an odd situation. But there is still more. Egypt felt like she had to tell Kenny that she was moving in with Curtis, and her sister begged her not to do this. She went to her stepmom and told her stepmom that she was scared to tell him, and in her exact words, she said, "He's like a puppy dog." I think she felt like she was abandoning him by doing this and that he wouldn't know how to handle this information. He obviously wasn't handling their breakup well. He obviously also wasn't handling the fact that she was back with Curtis well. And I think she was probably nervous about what was going to happen when she said she was moving in with Curtis, because that's a very, very permanent thing for the most part. And that would kind of really solidify it likely to Kenny that they were not going to be back together. So Egypt and Curtis were at the Strawberry Festival, I think in Belleville, and Curtis told Egypt that Kenny was there. And I'm assuming, but again, this is an assumption, I've never seen if this is exactly when she told him, but based on the information I've seen, that's what I'm led to believe. This is the moment I think she finally told him. Curtis told her where Kenny was, and she walked over there to talk to him. And Curtis said that within seconds, it was an obvious argument. They were, screaming at each other. It was just a mess. And finally, Egypt turned around to go back to the table with Curtis, but Kenny was right on her heels. Kenny was staying right behind her, just yelling and screaming, and would not drop the argument. And interestingly enough, 1 week later, Egypt was murdered. Because of all of this information, by March of 2018, Kenny was named as a person of interest. And from statements that I have read, authorities have said that they want to be able to clear Kenny, but they simply can't. But his attorney has said he's been incredibly cooperative. He has given a very detailed timeline of his whereabouts, all on the days surrounding Egypt's murder. But the thing that bothers me about that is that it's been a year, and I don't know if authorities just haven't said anything or if I have somehow missed something, but authorities have not cleared him in a year. And if he gave a very detailed timeline to authorities, the only reason they wouldn't have cleared him in an entire year would be if there was a hole somewhere. But unfortunately, again, we just don't have that information. While most people, including Egypt's family, believe that Kenny was possibly involved, Egypt's mom does not believe he was involved at all. She has said that in no way, shape, or form does she believe that Kenny would ever hurt her daughter. According to Egypt's mom, she said that Egypt would come over occasionally, in tears, very, very upset about Kenny, but that it was never anything physical. It was just over arguments. But the thing that I don't like about this is that as soon as she said it was never anything physical and that this man would never hurt her daughter, she then went on to say that there was an instance where he shoved her. And I don't want to make assumptions, but I feel like it's very possible maybe her mother doesn't want to believe that someone was hurting her daughter. What mother does want to believe that? The fact that she said herself she was aware of an instance where he physically shoved her, that totally negates the fact that she said she doesn't think he would ever hurt her, because she admitted that he had. To me, it seems like she really didn't want to upset her parents. She did not want them to be scared for her. I'm sure she didn't want to make it a bigger deal than it was. Again, if you are going through abuse in any way, shape, or form, you can feel like you are a burden. You're basically manipulated into feeling like you are the problem, and you don't want to make that anyone else's problem. But basically, the mom just simply doesn't believe that Kenny is involved. And she makes a great point that I can't really even argue with. She said that she just refuses to ruin someone's life with allegations and blaming them of something without any evidence. And that's responsible as heck. I completely agree with that. It's not smart to ever do that. My problem is that multiple people have come forward speaking on this abuse. They have all spoken about the same type of instances happening, and you can't ignore that. Even if it is proven to be false, that right there is evidence that there was violence happening within the relationship. There were violent tendencies in the relationship. And speculation because of that information isn't the same as blaming someone. It's important to look at all angles during a homicide investigation. You don't ignore something like abuse claims. Even after he was named a person of interest, though, she still stuck to her gut and said that she does not believe he was involved. She actually let him dog sit Ruby, and the entire family was not happy at all about that. But you know, I'm never one to knock a mother's instincts. I am a mother myself. I've said this before. So I guess we'll just see. Authorities did name him a person of interest for a reason. And they did say one thing that really stuck out to me, and it's that they basically only couldn't make him a suspect because they didn't have enough evidence. And to me, that means they are really leaning toward the fact that he potentially was involved. Because when you're a person of interest, you could just have information that someone needs, or you could be a person of interest because they just can't bump you up to a suspect. And that seems like the realm that they've put him in. That's literally all the information in the case. There is no more information at all. The neighbors at the time she lived in a duplex weren't even home. They were out at a festival. So they weren't there to hear the gunshot. They weren't there to see anything. This was the only information authorities had to work off of. So basically the rest of it is just theorizing and hoping that someone comes forward with information or someone finally cracks and comes forward and maybe confesses. Now, the mother is right in the fact that you don't want to close your mind off to possibilities. And I feel like everywhere I did see this case, everyone immediately jumped on Kenny. But I do see other potential ways this could have happened. According to Egypt's mom, Egypt said to her that she didn't feel safe in her home anymore. And in her words, she said because there was a lot of traffic going on next door. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means. The mother would not elaborate. That could mean a lot of things. To me, that kind of screams possible drugs. But we, again, don't know that. But let's say there was. Let's say drug dealing was going on next door. Let's say tons of sketchy people came in and out of the house on a constant basis. I wouldn't feel safe either. So I don't blame Egypt for not feeling safe. But my question is, if the neighbors were out of town, that wouldn't leave any reason for anyone else to be at the house at all. So what could have possibly happened to where someone not only came to their house, but all of a sudden also decided to murder their neighbor? To me, I can see it as maybe a possibility. There could be a lot of information we don't know. Maybe she had an incident with someone that came over. Maybe that's why she didn't feel safe. She saw something that she wasn't supposed to see. There are a lot of things that maybe she was the only person that knew about it, and that's why it wouldn't make sense. But I wouldn't say it would be safe to rule out that completely, because I can definitely see that as being a possibility. But if a lot of traffic means something else, that theory could be totally off. Unfortunately, we just don't have the information to support that at all. There's also a possibility that someone maybe met her through her job. Maybe someone became infatuated with her, or maybe, it was someone that planned to stalk her or attack her. Again, bartenders are very, very friendly, and she was open to everyone. She was so incredibly kind to everyone. So maybe she wasn't picking up on certain cues that this person was giving off. Maybe she gave away a little bit too much information. Maybe this person followed her home from her job. But again, there's not really any evidence to suggest this. I feel like at this point she might have mentioned something to her coworkers about someone that was acting strange. It would just kind of be quite a coincidence that all of this happened around the same time as the angry ex and moving in with the new boyfriend. While it's a possibility, it's just not a very likely one. Again, when you think of both of those are situations where this is someone that Egypt might not know very well. And authorities have said, based on the evidence, Egypt knew this person pretty well. She let this person in her house more than likely. It was late at night. This happened sometime after 10 p.m. And possibly into June 23rd. So she wouldn't have let someone in probably regardless if she didn't know them, but especially not late at night. So while those two theories do make a little bit of sense, it just really points to someone really, really knew her. This is someone that she really, really trusted. Think about who you would let in at 10:30, 11, midnight possibly. You have to know that person pretty dang well to let them into your house. Now, one question that I have, and one thing that has just been making my mind go personally, are the Christmas lights. First of all, that's a strange thing in itself. It was June. How does someone subdue a 5'10" woman that was as strong as she was without making a scene? This person would have had to have either brought Christmas lights, which means that this was a very spur of the moment plan to kind of go and do something to her. They didn't even take the time to maybe get rope or get something different. They just grabbed what they had. Or there's a possibility that maybe she just had these Christmas lights sitting out somewhere. But either way, it's just bizarre. And think about that. This person would have had to be big. This person would have had to be strong, would have had to have somehow, snuck up behind her and got her down on the ground and tied her hands without her kicking and thrashing and making obvious signs of a struggle. To me, it makes me really wonder if the lights were tied around her hands after the fact. It just kind of makes sense to me. I personally think it's very, very possible that she let someone in the house, she turned around to walk into the house, and this coward shot her in the head and then maybe panicked. Maybe they wanted to try to stage it to look like something different. I just don't understand how it would have been possible to do it before. Maybe you guys can see something that I'm not seeing. Christmas lights are just so incredibly bizarre to me. And my other issue with this, however, is that while this person seems to have known her, it doesn't seem like a crime of passion. Usually with crimes of passion, you see overkill. She was shot once in the head, and from what I've seen, there are no other injuries at all. If this was, an ex-lover, you would kind of assume for there to be some sort of overkill. But again, I am not a professional. I just am so unsure of what to think. And then I think about how caring she was and how she really didn't judge anyone. What if someone that only somewhat knew her showed up to her house and claimed they were in some desperate situation? Would she have let them in? It's just a lot. And unfortunately, like I said, authorities so far don't really have much to go off of. The only clear person that would have had a motive is unfortunately Kenny. So that is why he's a person of interest. But from what I've seen so far, it appears like he's being cooperative. On Crime Watch Daily, they tried to question him. He didn't seem very defensive or aggressive by any means. He said that he would answer any questions through his lawyer as long as it was through his lawyer. So it's not necessarily something you would expect from someone that's guilty. However, I have learned to not put much into a lot of people. You never really know how someone's going to react in a certain situation. But it's just heartbreaking because they have no answers still. And watching the Crime Watch Daily episode was so horrific to see, particularly her boyfriend that found her body, someone that loved her for, 10 years and finally felt like he was getting a chance to be with her. It was so hard to see how he felt. It was so incredibly hard. And then just watching her family and seeing how shocked they were and confused. And her dad said one thing that just tore me up inside.
She's gone for people that haven't even met her yet. She's gone for them, and she was just starting.
It was just a completely senseless murder. And the level of pain it has caused so many people is unbearable even to me, and I am just a bystander. I am just someone watching the situation happen in front of me. My hope is that they catch this person sooner rather than later. They have put billboards up everywhere they possibly can. I find it interesting because authorities actually wanted to help in placement of these to hopefully entice people to come and say something. And Crime Watch Daily noticed that a lot of the placement is in Kenny's neighborhood. I'm just going to let you take that as you will. They also have done a few fundraisers. They were trying to raise money for a private investigator, but I have not been able to see where that stands. I'm unsure if they have one yet. As I said, it seems like there's just not a lot of information in the past couple of months on what's going on. Something that I thought was so incredibly awesome was that Arbor Brewing Company actually ended up releasing a beer in honor of her. And it had her face on it, and it was her favorite flavors as the undertones, and they provided funds from the proceeds of this to women's shelters, to animal shelters because she loved animals, and also towards a music scholarship because of her singing. Community really rallied together, and everyone in the area is just rooting for authorities to figure out what happened. The family so badly wants closure. It's something that they think about obviously on a daily basis. And I know I say this and everyone says it's so cliche, so many people get mad at me, but it's such a small thing and it's so true and so infuriating that someone knows something. The thought that there is someone in this very second that we are in right now as we're watching this that has the information, knowing that someone out there is sleeping, continuing on with life, they might be partying, they might be drinking, they might be on vacation, they might be enjoying life right now, and they are the ones that killed Egypt. Knowing someone's out there that knows that, and she's the one who had her life taken away, it is so infuriating to me, and it is so infuriating to everyone who's ever been involved in any sort of unsolved murder or missing persons case. Someone knows something. I don't care how cliche it is. I don't care how many times I say it. It pisses me off. Someone's out there that knows exactly what happened, and they are too much of a coward to come forward, or maybe this person scared someone so bad that they won't come forward. But usually there is someone that has heard something, seen something, felt a certain way, and those are the people that need to come forward in this moment. This is what's so important, and this is the information that will end up solving a case like this. As always, I'm going to have all of the information listed down below. I have the number for the police department that you can call with information. I have Crime Stoppers listed down below. Crime Stoppers is entirely anonymous. So many people question this, and I don't know why. It's anonymous for a reason. I personally have submitted multiple tips into Crime Stoppers. You do not have to put your personal information absolutely anywhere. They remind you of this multiple times. So if you have any information that you want to bring forward, but maybe you're scared to, you want to remain unknown, please go to Crime Stoppers and submit information. This is someone's family, this is someone's life, and this murder is out there somewhere. There's no telling if this person will do it again. There's no telling if they've done it before. People around them just are not safe, period. They're not safe at all. And it's up to people that know things to come forward to help get this person locked up and put away so they can't harm anyone else. But I'm gonna go ahead and go, you guys. I want to thank you so much for listening to Egypt's story. This is one that I need you to spread like wildfire. Spread her picture, spread her story everywhere you possibly can. Keep her name going, because I feel like even though it seems authorities are very far away, I feel like they're holding information and they're just waiting for one small thing that can change everything. So exposure, as I say always, is absolutely everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button to become a part of the Hallan fam. I want to quickly remind you guys that I do accept suggestions for cases to cover. Right now I'm sitting at a few thousand, so don't be surprised if it takes me forever to get to a case that you might have suggested. Please be patient with me. I promise I'm working as fast as I possibly can. And I wanted to also remind you that that is the only place that I accept any sort of suggestions. I don't accept any suggestions on social media, through DMs, my email, anything like that. It's way too difficult to keep track of them that way. I get a ton of DMs and emails daily. So if you have any suggestion and you've either sent it in through DM and you haven't put it into the submission form yet, or you just haven't put it into the submission form just in general, don't forget it's down there. It's linked right down below. You can always get to it. It's always under all of my videos. And now I'm finally going to go. Thank you guys again, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.
Where'd you go? I miss you so. Seems like it's been forever since you've been gone. Where'd you go? I miss you so. Seems like it's been forever since you've been gone.
What was right and wrong with the world nowadays? Too many people who are stuck in a daze for days and days, sometimes weeks and months. The only way to beat it it was to turn your gaze up, as well as within, while falling to your knees. God, I wish life had some more guarantees, but since it never will, and nothing's ever certain, I won't worry where you went, there's no more burden.
Where'd you go? I miss you so. Seems like it's been forever since you've been gone. Please come back home.
Oh man, I wish you, I just want to hold you for just a couple more seconds. I want you to come home on Earth here, but it's cool because I know deep down that you're already home.